Hi, everybody. This is Neil. I am the host of the Regenerative Real Estate Podcast. And today I'm really excited because I've got a guest that I've been looking forward to having come on the show for quite a while now. We actually met her walking through our neighborhood, and we saw this green oasis of a farm in the middle of the city in Portland, Oregon. And right away, we knew this was a kindred spirit on the planet. And I'm really pleased and humbled to have Ann Forsthoefel come on the show and tell us a little bit about her life. So thank you, Ann, for taking the time out of your day and agreeing to do this.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for doing the podcast and trying to get people connected around regenerative, and I mean, it's what we're here to do right now in this point in time, is really to make those connections.
And I wanted to start off with really not what you're doing right now, but how did you get here? What's your backstory? Because the more that I hear about your story, the more I'm just intrigued and fascinated by all the life experience that you've had. So where do you come
from? I grew up in rural Ohio, a little small farming community. Town was about 250 people. We had I was the youngest of 10 children. My neighbors had 14 children, and my first cousins had 10. So there's about the 10. So we're making up a lot of the town already. And at that point in time, it was still, even though it was agriculture, it was that shift in time in when we were going from small family farms that were doing very diverse, farming, to soybeans, wheat, corn, or just big animal farms. So it was a really interesting time to grow up. So we weren't farmers ourselves. We weren't considered farmers, but my mom grew all of our food, preserved all of our food. And then we worked for a large family farm. My mom did. And then that's how I got involved working with them too. So it was at that point in time when we thought we needed to save the world through big ag. And now we're understanding what that was. So intentions always, I think, were on the positive side, on, let's produce more, let's get smarter about how we do it. But we didn't realize the impact because we didn't understand how interconnected we were with everything. So from that experience, I actually started working for this other family when I was 8 years old, cooking in their kitchen, because my older sister was 18 and she left, and that was her duties. And so I overtook that, and then I stayed with them till I was 18. And through that whole thing, it was a very unique community because, so my mom, she's way ahead of her times. I mean, way ahead. And, we had a Vitamixer, we had, everything, so we're juicing and we're doing things people never heard of, and stuff. But also the family I was working for were very much into preventative health. So, we were making yogurt, growing sprouts, making all of our own breads. So,
where do you think you got that from?
What's that?
Where do you think that she got that spirit and that philosophy from?
So my grandparents came here from Germany, and that was the philosophy and the spirit, very much of being connected, I guess is the best way, and respect, respecting that what you have in front of you. This, we had probably an acre of food growing, this is feeding. So, and also economically, there was no other way to feed 10 kids. So, and she was also a very spiritual person. So I think she just had it innate in her to realize that we need to know these skill sets, and she passed those down. So she never lost them. I mean, she never lost, making tinctures or, okay, if you get something stuck in your thumb and you need to pull it out, you put an egg white on it. That's what you're going to, so it'll draw out a splinter. but then she also was not denying medical science either. You know, if any of us were very sick, you know, like I suffered from asthma as a young child, you know, she definitely would bring me to the doctor. So it was a very balanced view that I got from her. But it was also very forward thinking and future thinking. And she was so conservative. I mean, you know, like saving everything, not wasting anything. And I think that was an ethic that most of us, where I grew up, really had, was that ethic of conservation, you know. So I think influence, I think spiritually she brought it in. I just think she, and that's really where I learned almost everything on how to do. I mean, you know, she would search my compost pile, for God's sakes, if I was throwing like out broccoli stalks or something. It's just like, you know, it's like, so it was never kind of easy till I got a little bit older either, because, you know, she was very uniquely unique. So.
And that's such a blessing to have that traditional knowledge passed down from your grandparents, really, and through your mom and into you and your siblings. And so that you bring us up to 18, you're still on the farm.
Yeah.
Where do you go after that?
So my driving force was food. It was very early. And so when I went to the university, I was on financial aid, and I got the university went into dietetics, and I was stunned when I got there and at the university, and they were teaching us to cook with white flour, and, you know, and like the hamburger, I'll never forget, one of my classmates, she also grew up on a farm, and it was like this beet red hamburger, and she goes, "Why is it red?" And, you know, and it was on a styrofoam tray. So from that university experience, I was like, you know, wow, we're so like, this is going backwards. But I got married very young, and I lost my financial aid, so I no longer could attend the private university. So from there, I went on to public university or state university, and that just was not working what I wanted to do. So I just decided to open my own business. So my husband and I opened a restaurant, and we couldn't find produce that we wanted to actually have on our menu. So then we bought a farm. And so that was 1991 when we opened the business finally. I had other jobs in between and stuff like that, and from time I graduated high school and stuff. But we bought a 14-acre farm so I could grow.
And that was in Ohio?
And it was in Ohio. And we weren't certified organic, but we had always, that's how I was brought up. I mean, organic, we always forget that organic is not a new thing. That's how we all grew until we had a surplus of chemicals from the wars, from World War I and World War II. And these chemical makers are like, okay, the wars are over now. What are we going to do with all these chemicals? And that's when we started applying them and tweaking them to try to fight pests. And then it just kept on building from there. So it was so funny because my farm in Ohio is 14 acres, and one of the largest conventional farmers is like right across my lane. Like his combine was almost bigger than our house, you know? And so it was just the dichotomy. And I've always have a lot of teaching experience. And so I had students come down from university, and I'd actually have them eat the soil from our farm and then go across and eat the soil from his farm. And they were always stunned. I mean, always stunned. I don't know if I do that anymore today, because I probably, you know, added a few chemicals that they didn't need into their body. But at the point in time, I was really trying to get the point across.
And so what was that point? Why were they so stunned? For the people that have not tasted soil out there.
Yes. Well, so my soil was loamy. It actually had an earthy taste to it. It actually had a richness almost to it. When they would taste the soil that had been farmed probably for 30 years already now, as a conventional farm, he would switch between corns and soybeans. There was no life to it. And it was also very metallic almost. So it was just a night and day difference. You know, it's like having this incredible brownie and then having burnt, flat, dry cake.
There
And
probably
so,
wasn't a weed in the field, though.
I don't know if there was, but it was just like, I remember at that point in time, we had a little creek running through our farm. And at one point in time, and in the area we live, we have high cancer rates. And at one point in time, one of my neighbor's dog was in the creek further down, and there were so many chemicals in the creek that the feet of the dog were like, just the skin was coming off. I mean, it was just, yeah, they were burnt. Yeah. So, I mean, so I grew up in this, area where some of my best friends still farm today and farm conventional that I grew up with. Um, and and I just feel we need to get out of the tractor and get on the ground and see what we're doing. So eventually from that experience, we closed the restaurant and had a restaurant catering business in 97. And I decided to get my master's in sustainable leadership through Antioch University. And I self-designed it. So that led us to Boulder, Colorado. Because I was going to do, in self-designing your master's, as an individualized master's of arts. So I had to find all my own instructors, I had to write my own curriculum. And my guiding force was not only agriculture and food, leadership, and then also, where are we spiritually with all of this? I mean, why? So I needed those three components. So I ended up at Naropa University in Boulder, Colorado. I taught for 15 weeks and I stayed almost 6 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it was just like, literally, I moved out by myself. My husband stayed back at the farm, and within 3 months we had sold the farm, and he was back in Boulder, Colorado with me.
And what did that look like? What were you doing to stay afloat during those times?
So I was a full-time student and then also worked at the university. And then my husband, Neil, he actually was hired at Horizon Organic Dairy. And so was one of the beginning people that worked there when they were organic. So it was a great fit. He grew up on a dairy farm. So that was a really good fit. So then the university, like I said, I was going to go for 15 weeks, but things flew in and just worked out. And then I found out I was working for the president's office, and the president started to learn more about me, and he's like, you should run our farm. And I'm like, we have a farm? This is like maybe 6 months in. And so he took me out, and it had been very not well taken care of. A lot of squatting, over the years and stuff. There was a great farmer there, but he wasn't getting the support that he needed either at that point in time from the university. And he decided to leave. And so I took it over, and we very proud of what we established. We established a CSA, got 100 families. We had 7 restaurant accounts. We did 4 credit and continuing education classes at the farm. We started a kids camp. We did a program for homebound seniors where youth at risk would come out to the farm and actually deliver the food. So we just did a lot of great programs and everything. And it was just, and in Colorado, we're so disconnected on how farming works at any level, small scale to large scale. Most of us don't even understand. But in Colorado, no matter what scale you are, it's based on water rights. And so those water rights maybe it has established 150 years ago. So you can have senior water rights or junior water rights. We were lucky we had senior and junior water rights and a well. So, I mean, the property itself was just worth so much because it had all of those. Because there's only a certain time you can take water through the ditches that run through the farms. And so if you get senior, you're really lucky.
On that farm, what kind of practices would you say that you were really following? Or is it the big conventional agriculture models that you're trying to apply, or were you going back to?
We were very small scale. So on that farm, it was 20 acres, and we were agroecology. So very much put in those practice of agroecology in small scale. I had gotten my permaculture certification, I think in 93 or 96. So between permaculture, agroecology, and what would today be called regenerative, that's a new term, those are the practices that we were all instilling. And also we did a lot of ceremonies. So we also incorporated an understanding and working with, the spiritual world of the whole planting and farm. And I had, during that time, right before I took this job at the university, when I was in Colorado, I spent 5 weeks at Finhorn, which is an intentional community based on understanding plant intelligence, and way more than that now. They have 16,000 visitors a year doing amazing classes. So it was a combination of all of that. And the university had a lot of spiritual diversity. So we had a lot of shamans that would actually come out to the farm. We did a lot of very diverse classes. And then we did very scientific classes, in water conservation. The years I was at that farm were some of the worst drought years that Colorado had. So normally Colorado gets 14 inches of rain. I'd come from a place that gets about 48 inches. So that was a big learning curve. But for about 2 to 3 years in a row, we only had 5 inches of rain each year. Wow. So you learn very quickly, should I be growing lettuce, what's the nutrient density of that, versus, or should I be having, bison on the farm? We didn't, but because that would have never gone with overall with the whole university philosophy. But the bison can eat things that we can't eat and convert it into very dense nutrient protein. So you just really have to, it's the time in my life where I really learned I had to not have just one philosophy on what I think is right and wrong in the food world, but I had to understand, where am I at this point in time? And what should I be doing best for what's here? So, because, we grew a lot of broccoli, tomatoes, and a lot of those things, which had a lot more higher nutritional value and are more diverse than maybe just eating lettuce, even though we still grew lettuce.
You mentioned your time at Finhorn.
Yeah.
You went there because they were studying plant intelligence. That really picks my ear up. I've done a lot of self-research into intentional communities and eco-villages, and Finhorn is always at the top of the list, but I don't think that many people, one, know about these kinds of communities out there, and two, whenever you say plant intelligence, I think the masses are kind of do a double take, and they'd say, what is that? What does she mean by that?
Well, first of all, I went to Finhorn because it was an eco-village design program. So it was a 5-week program to learn how to design an eco-village itself. So that was the program I was in, and it was, I think, 42 participants, and it was 20 different countries. So it was a phenomenal experience. But with plant intelligence, so Finhorn was established saying, I think we just have to really incorporate that plants were here probably about 3 billion years before we were. I'm not quite sure on that stat. And that whole world of plants, maybe they don't talk, but they do communicate. And this has been proven scientifically over and over. And I could give your listeners, if there's side notes or footnotes, plenty of not only documentation on the science behind this, but also books that really highlight plant intelligence. Plants are phenomenally intelligent. It blows my mind that we've lost the art of being part of the natural world. We've put something that's up here called a brain and think we're the only one that holds intelligence, and that's where all of our intelligence comes from. But our intelligence is not just the neurons there, it's our whole way we have come together. And that's all part of that natural world. And so, I mean, the largest organism in the world is a fungi, and it's in Eastern Oregon. And what they're learning, and this is Paul Stamets' work, he's a mycologist, and he's written incredible books, and his TED Talk is phenomenal, is these plants are the neurological network. That mycology is the neurological network of the whole earth. And so every time we dig into the soil, there's more bacteria in that teaspoon of soil that is beneficial. And if we start destroying it, we've just destroyed the biodiversity of that whole world. So people kind of blink their eyes when I talk about plant intelligence, but also I think about, look how many of the movies people go to, and the plants are talking, like trees in Lord of the Rings, or, all of these, we understand deep inside us, even though we might not intellectualize it, that we are connected. And we really understand there's a whole nother world. And especially the indigenous cultures and the native cultures have always understand the plant intelligence and have always honored it and really try to work with that intelligence. And Michael Pollan has done a lot of great work, I think, on trying to bring that to the forefront too. And Sir David Attenborough, if anyone just wants to be able to understand in a visual way, Sir David Attenborough's, all of his work is phenomenal on showcasing how that blackberry bush, it kind of scary actually, how fast they communicate and work and stuff. So I
Was
think
Attenborough behind the movie that Stamets was involved in with Fantastic Fungi?
I don't know. I really don't. But he's just phenomenal. That's all I can say. But I think we get hooked up on words because that's how you and I communicate. Well, we communicate 1,000 ways more than that, but we get hooked up on words, and we also get a hiccup on trying to understand what we become disconnected from. And so it's like we want to justify that we're numero numo or whatever, we're on the top of the food chain, and actually we're not. We got to reverse that food chain around because, I know we're very concerned right now with the virus going around, but without bacteria and mycelium, people have to understand it's going to be a different story if we don't really start understanding and protecting what makes it enables us to be able to have that salad or whatever we're eating. Or just, biodiversity and climate change are interconnected, and you can't pull the two apart.
Right.
You just can't. Right now, 75% of the food we eat in the world come from 12 plants and 5 animals.
That's an incredible statistic to think about.
Yeah, that's from the UN. And what's even more scary to me is that 150 out of 30,000 edible plant species is what we eat. So we only eat 150 out of 30,000 edible plant species.
And why do you think that is? I have theories around this, but do you think that it's because we simply don't know, or was it the agriculture practices that were promulgated over time to go for more production, or was it something different?
I think it's a combination of many things. So the agriculture practice is definitely, let's produce more. Let's genetically try to get the largest ear of corn we can get, with the least amount, with the quickest time, and then that's going to go to cattle. I really do understand the corn being grown in fields conventionally is not going to humans. That's going to cattle, the majority. So I think it's that, Neil. I think it's, I think also the onslaught of high fructose corn syrup changed our abilities to taste in a lot of ways. I think, so we became in the United States, whether it's going to be sweet or it's going to be salty. And so we don't have the whole balance. If you go to an Asian country, oh my God, you're just getting so much more, so, and then our exporting what we thought was a good thing, maybe, I don't know for sure where people were on that, exporting tractors exporting go big or go home, exporting just big instead of staying small scale, living in your community, seed saving, and understanding all those things. And there's also been a dominance of thinking that white people know more, and that indigenous cultures' knowledge wasn't respected or honored. And we created a whole mythology around that we put into practice on losing not only these cultures, but losing all that important knowledge that goes along with it.
I couldn't agree more. It reminds me of my time in Peace Corps, where I was actually working in an agriculture extension office in Eastern Europe, because my classical training in undergrad was actually in agriculture business with a specialty in economics and finance. And we were taught efficiency and yield production and input A plus B equals C, and how do we maximize this? And I really think that at that time it was the culmination of the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s of this is where we're going and with our agribusiness system. But in Eastern Europe particularly, it was an example of the USSR had fallen, and these big farms that had adopted these practices had long-lasting ramifications even whenever the land got parceled up, that we are dealing with things like highly contaminated wells.
Yes.
The only source of water that villagers would have was highly contaminated, and they didn't even realize it. And then you have all these social issues that come along with it, where I'm an extension of the US government in this role, and we were bringing in potable water. And I'm thinking, as a 24-year-old, we're doing a great job. This is an amazing project. But you've got these villagers that are thinking, oh my God, you know what? A free resource that I used to have is now going to be commoditized, and we're going to have to pay for it. And so they're realizing on the one hand that they're drinking literally poison for themselves and their children. And on the other hand, they're saying, you know what, I think we might stick with that because we don't have the money to pay for something that used to come out of the ground.
Yeah.
And what a crazy contradiction to be in as a global society, because I think that's where it's really gone, is that we've pumped a lot of aid out into the world, and it's not just the dollars that came along with it, but the mentality of we have superior knowledge and you need to do it this way. And it's really caused a huge social, spiritual, and economic backlash that I think is more present now with a global pandemic than ever before.
Yeah, and once again, who's going to suffer the most?
Right.
Those that without what we call money. You know, we made it into a god. You know, we'll protect it at any cost. You know, and we're learning now. It's going to be interesting to me because I'm outside every day and people stop and talk. We're at a reset. I know what's happening is truly scary and has a lot of anxiety for everyone. But what are people going to do after 2 months when they realize, I've been walking with my kid every day? Oh my God, I've been actually outside. I've been doing things that, I can't do when I get up at 6 a.m. and then I go to the gym and then I go to work and then I come home at 6 or 7 at night and I see the kids for, an hour of quality time, maybe. So there's going to be a lot of reset, I think, on people thinking about, wait a second, we're supposed to be living and not just working to make money so we can consume more.
I think you're spot on, and it'll be interesting to see where we go with a pandemic, because whenever you do get into the grind like that, you can certainly feel your inner tension getting stretched like a rubber band. And that's why people go on vacations and they feel so much better. And it harkens back to a point that you were making earlier about plant intelligence. And I think of, we've evolved with these plants over time. And so whenever we do get out in nature, there's so much that's going on there. Even the color green is relaxing our
I
parasympathetic
know.
nervous system. And I learned about the mycology that you're talking about, but also just the way that photosynthesis happens of sucking up the water and how oxygen is made, and it's getting pushed. Oxygen is literally getting pushed out with the essential oils
Mm-hmm.
of the plants that's actually boosting our immune system. So even a walk through a forested area, we're getting that the microbiome that we're breathing into, the visual stimulation, and all of the things that come with it. So I think it's really interesting that you're here in the 90s at Finhorn talking about plant intelligence and permaculture, which I don't think has really started to even come on the scene. And just in the last, let's call it 5 years, people have started to use that term more.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm not trying to take away from your story, because we're still in Colorado right now. And obviously
Yeah,
you and I both live
yeah,
in Portland,
yeah,
Oregon.
yeah. So, unfortunately, our president at the university did get ill. He got seriously ill, so he had to step down from being the president. And when the new president came in, he walked the farm with me, and I'll never forget. It was a cold, rainy day, and it was just like yuck. And I knew he just didn't see it. But I know what he did see, and it wasn't anything except for this is a small university that doesn't have a football team or a soccer team or anything like that. And so relies mainly just on tuition and always in a financial stress. And so analyzing what we had there at the farm, he realized that that could relieve a lot of financial stress and keep the university alive for years to come. And so they did end up selling the farm. So, and it's funny because he did not last long as the president, and the current president was here in Portland, probably 4 years ago, and he had a gathering, and I attended. And he said he was on the board of directors at the time, and he said the one thing we regret is we should have never sold the farm, And
That must have been devastating to turn it around
well,
and have it sold.
yeah. For me, when we left our restaurant, it was a bad separation from the landlord. So I actually, once I knew he was going to do that, I actually stepped down. And one of my managers, farm managers, incredible farmer and still farming today, just down the road in Colorado, took on that fight. I mean, I supported her as much as I could, but she took it on. Because I was still reeling from a bad separation from our last business. But she continued so many things we established. So we didn't lose, like kids camp, and she built even more things. And she's just one of the best farmers I've ever met. So, so after that happened, I actually ended up going to a startup company in Boulder. Boulder is kind of like a different Silicon Valley. There's a lot of startups there. And it was for a hydroponic company, which I have to tell you, I was totally biased. Like, there is no way you're growing anything in water as good as you're growing in soil. There is no way. And it was a company who developed a home countertop hydroponic system so you could grow vegetables or even strawberries and flowers, herbs, year round on your kitchen counter. And they still exist today. And so within, I was totally amazed. I mean, this is a startup, so we're literally buying plastic containers at Target, that have lids, and putting little pumps in them and cutting holes in the top of those lids and trying to figure out, well, what's going to hold the seed? What should be the medium? So, and then, okay, what's going to be the food? I mean, taking everything from scratch in a way, and ended up creating a product that works amazingly well. My unit from 2005 just went down in the last 3 months, and I had still been using it.
15 years.
Yeah, and so I learned so much. We worked with different scientists. We have so many patents, but I learned oh my God, a seed is, you talk about intelligence, that seed is holding all of that intelligence, all to become what it wants to become, to bring the highest potential of what it wants to be. And the reason we got so disconnected as a society with hydroponics as an option for growing is because the tomatoes that we were growing hydroponically in a commercial setting and shipping to a grocery store was not an heirloom seed. There's probably, some GMOs. Well, it wasn't a GMO when they first started, but they picked them, they grew them for, can they withstand shipping? They didn't grow a tomato that, that we say is an incredible, juicy, wonderful tomato. It's like, how far can it go? When can we get it out there? And can we gas it before we get it there? You know what I mean? So it was devoid of being anything I want to be. So not only did I learn that, but I actually operated the grow room for the company. So I was selecting seeds, and I was learning more and more about the importance of seeds. And that's where it all begins. And it's just phenomenal. I mean, someday I will never retire from what I'm doing, but I'm going to just dedicate a year, I think, just to understanding seeds. Because you talk about diversity, and how do they do it? I mean, I'm still like, how do they break that outer skin, their outer husk, and emerge? Like a red beet seed, that it has a little husk around it, and it looks, like a crazy little seed. But there's like 4 or 5 seeds inside that little husk. So that's why you always have to thin red beets, because when it breaks through, it's normally, more than one or whatever. So learned tons. I mean, we studied lighting. We got water from all across every major city in the United States to understand how can we adjust the pH. So because plants need normally a pH range between 6.8 to 7.2, so they can actually pull in the right nutrients. And so it was just amazing. And what I also learned was this will never take off as a home hobby, because you got to be a scientist. I mean, you got to know, when do I add this nutrient for growth? When do I add this nutrient for blooming? When do I add this nutrient for fruiting? And so that's what we did. We created a nutrient tablet that not only balanced the pH, but could handle all the aspects of that plant's needs. But these nutrients are still petroleum based. I mean, most of them, are still, something that's not derived naturally. But I was fascinating in understanding the science behind it, and fascinated to know that more people could become connected in their kitchen, even if they just grow basil for the rest of their life in their unit. It was like they're really starting to understand that, wow, when something is grown fresh and you get to cut it and taste it, it's amazingly different than when you go to the grocery store and you get that, wet, soggy herb, that's been sprayed upon forever. So that was a great experience for me. And my husband, he's often the first employee for many companies. So he was offered a job for a biodegradable diaper company in Portland. And so at that point in time, we decided to take that work, and I stayed with the company that was in Boulder here for about a year, but it just became too hard, to do it. So that's what got us to Portland, was his work. So,
and with the seeds, I've actually heard that one of the things that are threatening our global security is the conglomeration of seed-saving companies, that there's only really 4 companies that control 96% of the world's seed supply.
It's 4 companies, and they control 60%.
Oh, 60.
And every one of those seeds is patent. Every one of them. And so then they take the intelligence that was in that seed, and what they keep on trying to do is, how, once again, can I increase the yields? How can I make it resistant to pests? How can I make it so it's like we took a natural thing and we're making a cyborg. So Yeah, but it's 4 companies, and what we've lost the ability to do then is to understand seed saving and how important seed saving is. And you talk about a societal impact is when we, as you were telling your great story, I mean, are giving examples exactly when you were over in that Eastern European country. Now imagine for as long as a human being can remember, and it's normally women that are growing food worldwide in smaller areas. Wait a second, now I'm forced to use a GMO seed because I'm told this is going to be better. But you can't ever save a seed from a GMO. They're sterile. So now they're connected, as in your water story. Once again, they're now dependent on, I got to buy. Well, wait a second, I don't have money. Oh, wait a second, I'm going to lose my land. The one thing I have. So seeds are so critically important. And I have a serious problem with seeds too, because I have probably 500 packets in my house right now. And I keep on searching out the companies that not only are dedicated to heirlooms, but also those companies that I just found the oldest seed company in the United States is a Japanese seed company. And so, but look at the diversity of those seeds. I mean, that whole catalog blew me away because like half the things I had never heard of. And so how do we incorporate those? So my job now in running my farm is not only just farming, but also preparing food, is how do I bring those things, or selling my food, how do I bring those things together so people can value and appreciate and say, oh my God, what is this? I've never had this. And once you love something, you want to save it. But if we don't have that in our palate, we don't know that there's these. But I must have right now at least 40 different types of mustard seeds. And how do you even know? Because we're given the same thing over and over and over again. So when we go back to biodiversity, it's not just the animals, it's the seeds. We really have to understand that this is, how we feed ourselves. And so I just feel like when we eat the same thing over and over again, and I have no science on this, and I'm sure there's science that has to be done on it, it's like we're just making ourselves dumber. Like we're just losing our vitality. Because that seed produces a plant that then feeds us. And we want that plant to be vibrant and healthy and resilient. And we want it to, when we ingest that, we ingest part of that. Versus if you got that, big company seed, and who knows what they've done to it. It has been sprayed with something. I mean, my God, it's probably been arsenic on it. And it's just like, we're just losing this richness of vitality and resilience.
And I also think the philosophy that guides us is that our greatest opportunities lies next to our greatest challenges. And one of the things that I love about the period in time that we're going through, with all the bad things and the consequences of it, is that people are starting to waken up, and they're starting to realize this through flavor. And and something that we've always had a mantra for is that a sustainable future is a flavorful future. And I truly believe that, because if you have those tomatoes that they're heirloom and they're juicy and they're ripe, you can tell. And this is from a person that's talking very intimately about my wife, Alyssa, grew up in Alaska, and she hates tomatoes. And to her, a tomato is this soggy, mealy, flavorless, red thing that you can't even call it a fruit. It's just something that's in the store.
Yeah.
So going back to your husband's now working at a company in Portland. You move here.
Yes.
I know that you got involved with the Portland Farmers Market as the executive there. Was that right away?
Not right away. I was at a local nonprofit when I well, I was still with Arrow Garden, the company from Boulder, when I first moved here. And then I was with a local nonprofit, and my immediate supervisor, the COO, left and went to the Oregon Food Bank. And so she asked me to come with her. So I actually spent, I think, 18 months working for the Oregon Food Bank. And once again, another eye-opening experience. Made me rethink charity all over again. So, I mean, we don't have a food issue, people. We have an economic issue. People are not getting paid enough money, period. You know, people just, the prejudice against people that have to get food at the food bank, blew my mind away. Most of these people are working, husband and wife, they're both working. Sometimes one of them's working 2 jobs. So that was just a whole nother side of seeing food from that social culture aspect. And then while I was there, I wasn't looking for work, but it came to my attention that Portland Farmers Market was looking for an executive director. And the last day of the job was opening, the posting. I actually applied, and I did get it. And it was just the most, if you want to really know how good the future is going to be, go to your farmer's market. I mean, these people know so much. They're connected to the land. Their life and soul and blood is to help not only in the conservation end of maybe heirloom seeds, but also just that, wait a second, this is an economy. This is a true economy. You know what I mean? This is a true, and the amount of work they do, and it's such a community. I mean, it's such a beautiful community. So, and to know the face behind your food, you're going to feel a little bit safer at night. And, it's been interesting with the pandemic because the grocery store shelves, so many of them have been empty. And it's just, if you get a local farmer's market, you get security there. So, that was great. And then my husband got asked to take another position in Montana. And so for biomimicry, and for your listeners that don't know about biomimicry, Janine Benyus wrote the book Biomimicry, and it's a nonprofit, also a for-profit. One of the best books. I actually used it in my thesis. The biology, we need to mimic biology in all of our architecture and all of our design and our decision making and everything. And the website's phenomenal.
Look forward to reading that.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And the website's phenomenal. The Biomimicry 3.8. So I moved, but we kept our house here in Portland. But I only lasted a year in Montana. There was just no work for me. And I was just really missing my community. I was missing home. So I came home after a year and was lucky enough to get a great job working for another nonprofit here for women's rights. And unfortunately, in 2017, we lost a huge funder. And so over the course of 18 months, I was the COO at the time, we had to lay off 17 people. And so at the end of 2018, the company didn't need a COO. So in 2019, I also laid myself off in January. And so that gave me time to think, well, what should I be doing? And there's one thing I know more about myself is food's been my driving force. Nonprofit work's phenomenal, but growing and cooking and teaching about food is truly my passion and my destiny. So that's why I had already been growing a huge percentage of food on our lot here in Portland, but then I actually took down a huge tree and converted it even more so I could grow and demonstrate and teach in tours and classes.
And I want that to sink in for people is that you live on a very urban neighborhood that in North Portland. It's probably 5,500 square feet, if that, maybe 5,000. That's our standard residential lot size in inner Portland. How big is it exactly?
It's a 55 by 100, so it's 5,500 square feet.
So 5,500. You've got a corner lot, which is really nice.
Yes.
And you decided to turn that into a farm. Yeah, I mean, who does
Eh.
that? There's not.
Well, so, urban farming is an up and growing thing, but what's different is my size, for sure. And also the different methodologies I use for growing. But
There's
so
a
what's the
house
difference?
in the middle of that too.
Yes, there's a
That's
house.
the kicker,
Yeah,
is
yeah,
that
yeah. It's not an empty lot.
right?
So, so the thing is that I was contemplating, my husband and I, should we just move, leave the Portland area and just buy land, because I can live off the land and totally take care of, us forever. And my husband also helps. But I thought, if I can prove this concept that we can actually, I think all buildings, let me put it this way, all buildings should be a net producer of water, energy, and food. And if I can do this demonstration here on this 5,500 square foot lot, which you said is dominated by a house mainly. It's a small ranch, but still 3,000 square feet of it, probably covers. Then anyone can do it. Do you know what I mean? And we can do it and make ourselves more resilient where we live. Now, I have over 200 different varieties between fruit trees, vegetables, flowers, herbs that I grow. No one's probably going to be, this is my thing. But it gives a living proof and living example of what we can do where we live. And I think that's extremely important, because we need to understand that to get that salad to your table, if it didn't come from the farmer's market, if it went to the grocery store, well, it was probably 5 to 7 days since it's been picked, first of all, at least. But all the inputs that it takes to get that to your plate are huge. There's like 12 to 14 of them that with classes that we identified from, there's transportation. Then there's all the plastic or whatever the container it's being used. Then, what were the conditions of the people growing it? I mean, we don't understand that slavery still exists in the United States with agricultural workers. I mean, and then if it's organic, great. But if they plowed down a forest to grow organic spinach, we just lost a whole bunch of biodiversity. So making a food choice, when you get deep down into it, you're making an earth choice. How am I going to live on this earth? And to be quite honest, most people, this is why, once again, people are going to have more time to think right now. Because a driving force is like, I want to do the right thing. I really do. But I need it to be simple, and I need it to be convenient, and I need it to be quick. That's how we've been programmed. So if I can get people just a little bit engaged or a little bit inspired, and also there is nothing better in the world. I mean, nothing better than to see a seed sprout. I mean, when you see that little thing come out of the dirt or whatever you're growing in, and it sprouts, and then if it's a cucumber, all of a sudden, like 2 days later, it's doubled in size. I mean, it's phenomenal. And that you're part of that. And so I do a morning ceremony every day before I start my day, and I do it in my seed room normally, because it's not just what's coming out of the packet, but what am I thinking about? What am I doing with it? So yeah.
Because you've had decades at this.
Yes.
When you say programmed, I want to be very clear that we're going on now 2 generations, really, since so much change after World War II, into an age of convenience, that whenever I look at my lawn, and I'm on a 5,000 square foot corner lot, it took a lot first to realize that green grass that I'm looking at is actually just dead soil. That's not really doing anything. It's maybe storing a little bit of carbon sequestration, but overall, plants aren't going to natural habitat. It's not going for food. It's not going for anything except a net drain out of my pocket, because I was paying a landscaper to do it.
Right.
But really, it's been a process of trying to understand, like, I don't know what I don't know right now. I don't even know how to go about transforming a landscape to be productive, even on a small scale. And I've intentionally put myself into a position to learn. And that's why, with this vision that you have of every building should be net positive
Mm-hmm.
on water, food, and energy, how do you see people going about that whenever there's no passed down knowledge or wisdom? and
Mm-hmm.
and so for the people that are really truly coming into this on their own for the first time, and they have nothing to lean back on from their parents or their grandparents, how do you go about doing that?
Well, I gave a tour to Portland State University students 2 weeks ago, I think it was now, last week, I'm not for sure. And, that's one of the things, like, how do we learn? So I have classes, but one of the students and I didn't know this, I think she did it at PSU. Well, it was a 12-week permaculture class. So there's permaculture classes. And so permaculture is a coined word, meaning permanent agriculture. So permaculture classes, which you can get online, you can do anywhere now. I mean, almost every major city has them, but you can do them online. It's a great way to start harnessing some of that historical knowledge, but it's even more than that. I mean, because one of the things that we have to really immerse ourselves into, and this permaculture does this amazingly well, is that we need to design. So like, as you say, where do I start? What do I do? Well, permaculture gives you that foundation of, okay, if this is my house, and there is urban permaculture books too, what should I have at the outer fringes versus what should I have next to my door? So if I'm going to have a chicken coop, where should that chicken coop be established? So that is a very, very first great step on doing it. The future of where I see urban farming going, there's two futures. One is we're going to replicate conventional farming, and we're just going to put it in buildings. We're just going to build tall buildings that are all glass, and there's going to be one crop. And we're not going to include the biodiversity. We're not going to understand how everything's essential. That's happening pretty quickly around the world. Then the other possibility is to have just, people like me. What I want to be able to do is do a commercial spot and have that be not only a place you can purchase retail, but also be a learning center to connect people. Because everyone is not intended to become a farmer. But, you and Alyssa are so great and passionate about that, but there's just talk about jobs of the future. There should be people out there designing those lawns, so to convert them into those three things that they can do. My backdoor neighbor is a water engineer, and we're going to start working on projects together, because that makes sense. But I think the one thing that we have, and the other way we're heading and where I'm heading, is how do I learn to become a forest? That's the most important thing. A forest is a perfect ecological system on letting things that are growing low, that grow high, they have an incredible amount of diversity. When a tree falls down, it becomes food for, forever and ever. So how do I learn never to have bare land on my little plot here? So I have a huge learning scale yet to get there. I do a lot of intercropping right now. So like you can see in a box, I might have lettuce planted, and right next to it, I have to plant super close, will be a red beet. So I got one thing going up, I got one thing going down. Or if I know, like if you're putting cabbages down, well then sprinkle arugula when you put your cabbages down. Cabbages are going to take 90 days to produce that head. Arugula is going to be done in 30 days. So, I mean, so you can just have succession. And this is going to become more, as we said, we're just going to leap forward quickly, I think, in a lot of these things, because I think the millennial generation is just so freaking bright and concerned and wants this to happen. I really do. And and like I said, even if you're just growing one plant in a windowsill, it helps. It really does. And then, we keep on experimenting. Like, okay, so if you are in an apartment or you have contained space, we built a vertical unit on our patio last year. And so and they're just made out of downspouts, and it takes up 3 feet by 2 feet. But each downspout has approximately 30 holes in it. So you can plant 90 plants in a by 3 by 3 space, but by going vertical. So we have a lot to learn on that. It's not been perfect, but it's been amazing. So, and then I say the big thing also is we have to relax a little bit in that we're so driven, like we have to have it overnight. We have to be perfect, and it's got to do this, and it's got to do that. Shit, I'm constantly losing stuff. I'm constantly got things going wrong and everything. But also, I'm co-creating here. I'm not running the show. I'm just lucky that I can be on stage with the plants. I mean, they're doing all the work. I mean, literally. I mean, if you asked me to go into a laboratory tomorrow and grow grass, and I didn't have a seed, I would have no idea. Right? I mean, like, how does it do it? Or you mentioned photosynthesis before. Can we replicate that in any which way? I mean, so I really am constantly learning. And it's like, if the intent's there, just relax around it too. I mean, just throw out a packet of wildflower seeds, and you've done humanity, you've done the earth and the biodiversity a huge, huge, huge thing. And why I say that is because we need pollinators, and so that's all I did on one of my strips now is it cost me $5.95. It covered like 1,200 square feet, and it's reproduced itself every year. I've never had to do it again. And it attracts every pollinator known. I mean, it's so rare to see a butterfly, but I still see them because we need to know every third bite of food that we take is due to a pollinator. Every third bite. And just this past month, the annual migration of the monarch butterflies to California, the count was only 24,000. In 1980, it was 4.5 million. Wow. So we have to understand that interconnectedness. We need to protect all these things because I personally do not want a future where I'm eating or ingesting, I'd be ingesting a synthetic something made in a laboratory, because I don't want that. I mean, and we might not have an option if we don't really start diving deeply into understanding the impacts and where our current ecological situation is for all living things. And I'm including water, I'm including mountains, glaciers, all of that. So, and we can change that by what we decide to put on our plate and how we got it there.
And if you're attacking this from an urban lot in the middle of a city, what's the economic model here? Where are you going with your farm? Who do you serve? We've bought greens from you, but what does that look like?
So my business model is one that where I make my best money, or the most profitable part of the business model, is that people actually come here to dine. So I grow it, I harvest it the day you come, or you can harvest it with me, and then I prepare it, and you pay for that experience. So that's my number one best profitable. I also prepare meals to go, and that includes salad greens. You can buy those bulk and everything. But where I'm leading more and more, and I just put on my website in the last 2 days, is more and more classes. So classes are very, also in my business model, very profitable for me. But it is just me. And so where I run into is the constraint of how much do I divide between, because I gotta, I got production going constantly. I put out 300 lettuce plants in the last 2 days. So I got to get the seeds started in my basement. I got to get them, hardened off on my patio. I have my own little setup there. And then I got to get them in the ground. And then I got to keep on getting things going. I have no irrigation system, so I water by hand. I have an aquaponic system. I have chickens. So it's balancing how many classes can I do, how many dinners can I do with running the farm. And then starting May 1st, and I haven't made this announcement yet, is I did pop-up farm stands last year, just randomly, but I'm going to do it every Saturday. And my little 8-year-old neighbor is going to help run the stand. So
that'll be great. We'll be sure to check.
Yeah. And so that's amazing. So that model, and then, so it's not economically viable for someone to do this yet, to follow what I'm doing, until we have more of a demand and those classes can be sold out. And there's more of us that can take, like ironically yesterday, this happens every day, but someone stopped and she was on her bike and she said, I just want to let you know that I ride by here every day to go to work and it makes my day. She goes, it is so beautiful. And it's just, I always want to see what's going on. And so then I asked her, I said, oh, so you're still going to work? That's great. She goes, well, no, not really. And, I got laid off. And I'm like, so we just started talking. And I said, I tell you what, if you want to help me out right now, that's great. And I'll pay you in food. And so, so we're in this interesting time because I need more labor, to be quite honest, but I can't pay anyone. So people are just coming up left and right, and want to know that. But then also, I want people to become, what's the phrase? You can teach them how to fish, right?
Yeah.
So I just put on the site through April, all of my farming gardening classes are free. So, you just got to contact me because I do have to obey the limits on how many people. But if I see a huge interest in that, it's 90 minutes out of my day. But if I'm getting someone to do 90 minutes of work for me outside while I'm teaching, then, then that pays off, but I'm really picky who's going to touch my plants.
And I think the impact is really long lasting on that. And it's a very timely thing, especially as we're going through a pandemic where you're teaching people how to be more resilient. And it truly does feel like people are starting to wake up and realize. I'd heard something a while back about the levels of consciousness or awareness that at first you don't know what you don't know. And then you graduate into, I realize that there's something that I don't know about and I've got to go figure it out. And then the next step is, okay, I know what it is, but I just don't know how to do it. And I'm having to incorporate it slowly but surely. And then you finally get to the highest level of knowledge of where you're doing it, and it's habitual and it's secondhand at this point. And we're kind of caught as a society and a culture in between there. Most people don't know that they don't know yet. And really, as you get those people that walk by, just like Alyssa and I think we're a great example of, what, we saw it, we are inspired by it, and now we want to promote it, and we also want to replicate it. And so I think it's a phenomenal way to really go about it, and your message of have brevity for yourself, because I look at my yard and I'm like, this looks a huge pile of wood chips right now, and
it looks so good. I can't believe how much you guys have done already. And also, it's just, you guys, that's the thing. And also what we haven't talked about, and I know we're running out of time, but is this has got to be joyful. It's got to be fun too. I mean, so my tag is beauty, bounty, and biodiversity. We've hit a lot on the bounty, biodiversity, but In the height of summer, on my 5,500 square foot lot, I can produce enough for 8 to 10 people to eat weekly. And then I still preserve everything, so I have it during the winter. But the beauty is what draws people in. People just stop. And because we all need more beauty. And I didn't even talk about the fairy garden. I have a fairy garden. It's got to be joyful. It's got to be where people like, they can let down and relax and say, I belong. Because we all belong, and we just don't think we do sometimes. And we all belong. And we belong to something so much bigger and so much beautiful than we realize.
That is a great point. I want to direct people to you in any way that I can. I know that you've got a website. Is that anniesurbanfarm.com? Is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I encourage people to go there and reach out to Ann, because she's an amazing person. And I'm just so appreciative of your time today. I could keep going for a couple hours, but I know that
the sun is shining.
the sun is shining and you've got plants to
Yeah.
attend to. So, Ann,
Yeah.
this is amazing. Again, anniesurbanfarm.com. It's truly inspiring work that you're doing, and I'm so appreciative of you coming on here.
It's mutual. I'm very appreciative to have you and Alyssa, Lulu in my life.
It's our pleasure. All right, Ann. Thanks so much.
Okay. Bye.